Despite the generous paid leave policies of my employer, where I've worked for roughly the last decade, I always struggle with taking vacations. It's not so much that I worry about work as that I struggle to imagine relaxation. I'm a man who needs routines, so the idea of tossing out everything I normally do in a week and traveling to a new place where I'll need to adapt to local conditions and find new things to do each day is not especially enticing. My favorite trips generally involve a fair amount of repetition. I like going to a new place and writing each day, rarely leaving my room. I like going to a city with an institution I like and then repeatedly visiting. Last week, Tracy and I went on a trip to Kansas City, where I'd already been once, and listened to live jazz at one club or its neighbor for the 4 days that followed. This week's Thanksgiving special is also a Kansas City special, discussing our trip and the places we went, including a used bookstore. My guest this week is once again Tracy Ray Bowling, my extremely hot and charming partner, who also kindly created this very dignified theme music. Why do whistles have to be wet? Why do they demand moisture?
I mean, most instruments need to be dry, yes. So it is curious.
And the whistle is not a complicated instrument.
No, although, can you make those sounds? Disrespectful, I think.
No, that's fair. I just don't think there's a place in the whistle for a secret bladder.
Yeah.
For storing the moisture.
No, it all just comes out the end.
And I don't think that it needs to be lubricated to do its shrill work. Mm-hmm. So it's not totally obvious to me what's going on.
Often the pieces or keys of an instrument do need to be lubricated occasionally. But yeah, the sort of the throat of the instrument, not usually something you wet.
Mm-hmm. I do like the idea of a whistle having a throat. It is occurring to me that a slide whistle might be the exception. It might actually really benefit from some lubrication because of all the sort of in and out motion that is going to be key to its success.
By the same token, when are you using the slide whistle to such an extent that, it's oh no, the slide whistle's gone dry? If you're doing a slide whistle right, it's an occasional interruption, right?
Yeah, for you and me, because we're not slide whistle professionals. If we were making our daily bread with slide whistle performances, we would be doing everything we could to maximize our slide whistle hours.
You feel that Beethoven composed for the slide whistle, for
Why
example.
would Beethoven... Okay, for example is a good thing to say there. That's helpful because I didn't understand why Beethoven had to be the slide whistle composer.
No, I'm just trying to think of, a major composer would generally compose for several instruments, and they would compose symphonies that highlight certain instruments that give them a lot of solos. So I'm trying to think, on what context is a slide whistle really performing at length? And it's a Beethoven-esque symphony featuring the slide whistle.
What about Mozart? Because his fart humor could really, a slide whistle could do wonders for him.
He was my first thought, and I guess you could say a slide whistle has too many notes.
It's nothing but notes. Mm-hmm. It's a scale without increments. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the first segment of the program. Killer bees.
What?
We're doing Killer Bee Watch.
Oh, okay. You want to check back in on our visual novel and see if the killer bees have showed back up in the last 80 hours?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Well, now wait a minute. This is a whole segment. We got to do a theme song. We gotta sort of lay the groundwork for anybody who doesn't know because they skipped the visual novel episode. That I'm waiting to see if the killer bees that appear in one particular timeline of the 100 line : Last Defense Academy if we'll see those killer bees again. And as you say, so far, no killer bee reappearance, no allusion to the killer bees, no explanation. Like, we didn't do a different timeline where the characters happen to walk by like a big beehive and say like, oh man, lucky we're not encountering those bees. They would be a real menace.
Or imagine if we had like tended a garden that would be attractive to bees. That would just be asking for bees.
We could have one of those very well-intentioned, like, bee-specific gardens to designed to save the bees and attract them and help them regain their strength and numbers. If I ran into one of those in this game, well, I guess I would have two. I don't know what I would do. Here's the problem. I want nothing more than to see these bees. I've been very clear on this point. I need to see the bees again. I need to know they were real and that they've been fully accounted for in the rich tapestry of the game's fiction. But the bees were very destructive. And like, they kind of took over the situation once they showed up. I can't say that seeing the bees again would be wise. Like, our characters do not want to see the bees. They don't benefit from that.
No one wants to see the bees again, except for you.
Except for me.
And I know what you mean, because it does, the further we get from the bee timeline, the more it feels like just some kind of psychotic dream. You know, were there bees? I'm not sure.
Were there bees, and were there like so many bees? Like, we went from no bees in the game to there were enough bees that you could have several kill a person, one more get like ridden down into the room by the bad guy who was nominally in charge of the bees, and then have two bees literally hanging around 24 hours a day holding up a scoreboard that nobody had bothered to mount. We went from no bees to that many bees.
I forgot about the scoreboard hanging bees. That's such a great... whoever wrote this timeline is a genius, and they communicated with no one else on the team, so no one else knew to pull in the killer bees. Or they did it as a dare, like, I bet you won't find a use for these killer bees I created. And guess what? They're pretty instrumental to this timeline. They are not sort of a sideshow.
I'm curious if you noticed, because I haven't been paying good attention, but I just noticed it happening for the first time. When I turned on Zoom for this recording, it asked me if I wanted to turn on like camera tracking.
Yeah.
I guess nominally to keep me centered.
Yeah.
And I was confused by this because the camera that I have attached to this monitor does not have any kind of actuator. It's not on like a gimbal. There's no way that I can see for it to rotate to keep me in frame. So apparently what it's doing to deal with that is it's just kind of zooming in and out a little bit and hoping that I will be easier to see as a result. Is it helping you? Do you feel more like you're in the room with me?
Well, first, I think you're like weeks behind on this update. This has been a topic of conversation at my work for a while now, and I hate it. I turned it off immediately. It's very distracting. It doesn't help anyone. It's a bad update.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not participating very well. I'm trying to reset. How can I be less mad about this Zoom feature that seems bad?
Have you been in a meeting yet where it was like a Brady Bunch theme song level of grid, faces in 3x3 arrangements, and all the cameras were like zooming in and out to try and maximize the amount of human face centered in each pane?
No, but that's a great idea. Maybe that would make me like it a little more. It's only been like one-on-one situations, and it became like some of those conversations in the early days of Zoom where people... You're just zoomed in, which really illustrated the problem because it gave the whole conversation sort of a sudden like, what's happening with Mike right now? Let's zoom in and see if we can pick up the nuances of Mike's expressions as he talks to Tracy. It feels sinister.
I got to remember to turn it on because I'm going to turn it off for your comfort at some point, though not today. But I'll remember to turn it on for my next Zoom interview so that can be sort of an extra challenge and also a bit of flavor in the next time I'm on like the first of 3 rounds of interviews on a camera.
To be honest with you, this is maybe the most thrilling instance that I've encountered so far, because what usually happens is the person notices it way after I do. So I'm just sitting there being like, yep, their Zoom thing is on. Yep, their camera is doing that thing. And then I decide to ignore it, but they realize about halfway through the conversation and become so distracted by it that they get into their settings and they can't figure out how to change it.
Yeah.
So I've had this experience several times.
Yeah. You know, another fun thing about it is I don't think that it is showing me the moves that it's doing nearly as much as it's showing them to you. Like, it may be happening on your end, because I didn't see the one that you talked about. And you know, I'm constantly glancing down at my window in the Zoom just to make sure that I'm not like showing my butt or something. You know how my butt is always just off screen when I'm on Zoom?
Right. Yeah. Like,
and I got to keep it there.
From chest down, it's butt. It's bare butt and it's facing the camera, and it's really hard to keep it out of frame, but you do it, and this update has made that impossible, or at least, you know,
fraught.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the Killer Bee segment.
I actually have one more thing for the Killer Bee segment.
Oh, good.
Which is that you said with some stank in your voice, one of those well-meaning bee gardens that attracts pollinators. So what's your beef with the pollinator garden?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, bees are already sort of a hazard, right? And my feeling is that the pollinator support gardens are acceptable until we have massive killer bees. And if there's ever evil massive killer bees that, for example, are sort of the referees and wardens of a killing game, I will require that everyone end their pollinator garden efforts. I'm going to need them to stop immediately.
Well, I think the best bee gardens are very intentionally planned to attract certain kinds of bees and not say wasps or hornets, which have very different needs and wants from a garden. I have to think that they're not equally attractive to killer bees as well, especially given, like, I guess in our game, the killer bees drink blood, essentially.
So you and I went to Kansas City recently. We went on a trip Thursday through Monday.
Yeah.
It was going to be a Friday, but then we're like, no, one extra day. Let's treat ourselves to a little bit more vacation.
Yeah, not even a 3-day weekend, but a 5-day weekend.
That's so many days for a weekend to be.
Yeah. It's almost a week.
And I'm interested in exploring that model where we have 5 days off and then we work for 2 days. Mm-hmm. How different would that be, really, in terms of how much got done for a lot of us?
Man, it's true. I mean, the main difference for me is, and I guess this is fair, but, you know, it's just that other people are around for those other days. You know, yeah. As long as those other people are working, I will have work to do. But what if we all just decided to work 2 days? Then I think we would get it all done just fine.
Now, I do work in a hospital.
We do think they should probably work every day, unfortunately.
I think that the medical personnel probably are going to have to work most days of the week. Fortunately, I'm not one of them. But I do think that if we could all just sort of agree not to have any medical problems or episodes 5 days out of the week, and to just focus it on the other 2. I suppose there are some logistical challenges posed by that scenario as well, but I can't help thinking, if you know you're going to get sick and you successfully put it off for like 3 days, I think you might not even remember to do it. You might forget to get sick entirely. So I think this could actually like have a lot of medical benefits that we haven't explored.
I think that you might still need an emergency room. I think that some medical issues are in fact emergencies.
There was a time a couple weeks ago where I stayed late at the office on a Friday. I don't remember how late, but I remember I was there in the evening and I was a little distressed because I was like, well, Friday night at the ER has to be like one of the big events of the hospital's week, right? Like that has to be a pretty hot moment for people to have injuries and things, stuck in their butt and like falls
Sure.
and things like that. And the hospital went quiet, and that rush in the time that I was there never materialized. And I was just looking around like, when does it happen? When does the Friday night rush begin? And it wasn't until after I left, or maybe there is no Friday night rush.
I feel like you were talking to somebody about this and they said that Saturday is more the day.
I mean, Saturday is definitely because one, a lot of your Friday disasters are going to be technically calendar-wise Saturday disasters.
Right.
Maybe the majority are going to be taking place after midnight. And then, yeah, obviously, if you've been making mistakes on Friday, but they haven't quite come to a head, Saturday is an extremely likely moment for everything to fall apart.
Right. Then Saturday you get all the like yard work injuries and heart attacks.
A lot of people are like confronting the nightmare that is their life as a middle class lawnmower, a person with a lawn on Saturdays, and they're just having heart attacks. They're like, you know what? I can't anymore.
Yeah, I think lawn related emergencies, one of the additional categories of emergency in addition to your three. I can't remember the first one. Darn it.
Stuff stuck in the butt.
That was the second one.
Falls.
Yes, third.
Something else.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think I went straight to the butt. I mean, it's front of mind because mine is almost in frame. And I'm still dealing with that anxiety.
Yeah.
So Kansas City, we went there because I went a couple years ago for the, it's the stupid acronym fucks me up every time. The Association of Writers and Writing Programs.
That's
which
correct.
Naturally, rather than being called AWWP, is called AWP. We doubled up on that W. So this is the annual conference where people mostly with advanced writing degrees, MFAs, MAs, PhDs, get together and, I don't know, pretend to have had a reason to do that. Like they do panels where they talk about their books and nobody really listens. And then the person at the end gets up and asks a question that's really an excuse to talk about their book and its deal.
Yeah, and you know, it's difficult because since creative writing became an academic discipline, there was sort of a need for something like this out there, right? Like any other academic discipline has its conference, and that's a major part of where your faculty are going to get their credentials for being on a panel, presenting some research, being thought leaders in their field. And so creative writing faculty, which is now a type of person that exists, in the last 40 years or so, they need something like that. The question is whether the rest of us do, and that is the great mystery and evolution of AWP as a conference, because they have to provide that service, but they also have to make it something that just an aspiring writer would come to, because those are the other kinds of people who will spend money on this conference. Faculty who are getting it paid for through their position with the universities, and people who want to write and feel like, this is probably the place you go to do that. It's not so much, but they have to kind of keep up the appearance that it is, right? So they have publishers come and talk. They have agents talk about like how to pitch your book. So they serve very different, like a few different, very different constituencies. And I think that's kind of fascinating to watch it as it changes over time. Like I would say right now, it's very much more geared toward the aspiring writer crowd. And so, yeah, the panels are a little like more how to, and they've got some more like influencer types on there. Yeah, I don't think you necessarily meant to get this deep into AWP.
I didn't. I've been continually surprised.
I've been thinking about it a lot because I've had to I'm in a new position this year, and part of my one of my new responsibilities has been working with student organizations to get them funding to go to AWP. And so I've had to do a lot of explaining about why this is beneficial for them.
Right. So should I not create a public record of you saying that it's not? Listen, okay.
Let me finish, because I was going to say I do believe it's beneficial for them.
Excellent.
Yeah. But I've been thinking about like why exactly though, because it's not that I necessarily think that they're going to learn a lot from from like hearing faculty presentations so much. So yeah, I was just trying to kind of work through, like, it has changed, and I do think it's a useful thing to do if you're interested in writing and publishing. I do think it kind of works in the way that I think going to a film festival or something can inspire creativity, even if you're not like actually getting anything out of the festival. Does that make sense?
Because like I think most collective human endeavors in particular, most times we go into public places to be with other people that we have a thing in common with. I think it's mostly like tricking yourself into maybe having a productive experience that is almost never the one that you would imagine. Like whoever thinks they're going to these things and they're going to meet an agent that is going to represent them, or they're going to hear the person say the perfect thing that inspires a novel that is going to be their big hit. Like nothing that you want to happen ever happens there. But by virtue of getting that many people into the same place, roughly, that have some things in common, it almost can't help but be productive and educational, but you don't always know how that's going to happen in advance. I mean, you never know. And sometimes it won't, is the other side of that. Like sometimes it just doesn't work. Like I'm trying to think. So I went to Kansas City a couple years ago for AWP is how we got into this thread. And I did not participate in the conference. They received zero money from me. I didn't even go to the book fair, which often the move is that you go to the city where the conference is taking place. Maybe you even go to the conference hotel. And then the only time you set foot on the official premises is you'll buy 1 day pass for the book fair that takes place there, and you'll wander around and encounter some people. And then beyond that, you're just going to readings and events and stuff.
Yeah. And that's a common way to do it. I didn't realize you actually didn't go to AWP that year. So yeah, you were, I guess, just going for sort of the social activity of it, just kind of being around writers and maybe meeting up with some friends. Yeah,
I was socializing with writers. I was socializing with friends. Writers make the best friends. And I met with my agent. We had a drink along with a bunch of the other people that she represents. And yeah, it was a positive experience in general. But the real takeaway for me was that I really enjoyed going to a jazz club that is in Kansas City several times.
Yeah, the Green Lady Lounge.
I chose that one with very little information to work from. Tracy and I are not long-time jazz enjoyers, but I did a little research in advance and saw that it was well-liked. And then when I told the Uber driver that was where I was going, he said, that's the right one. And I was like, got it. Nice. I don't have to think about this anymore. Now, did that man know anything about jazz? I don't know. Is that the consensus in the city? I don't think so.
Yes,
it might be.
It is.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
You looked into this?
Well, I ended up spending a little time on Reddit. After we had gone to the Green Lady on this trip once or twice, I was looking up to see, because we kind of, after we went there twice, we sort of thought like, well, maybe we've kind of heard the style of jazz that this place has to offer. It might be nice to hear some more like, I don't know, slightly experimental or avant-garde jazz. And so I looked that up, and people were pretty much just like, yeah, Green Lady is where you go. There are other places that are fine, but are more like a supper club, which is the kind of thing we found when we took a similar jazz trip to Chicago a few years ago. Not a few years ago, a few like months ago. Like everything there was much more, you pay for a seat at a dinner table, basically, and you're going to get food while you're there from their limited menu, and you're going to listen to jazz, and that whole experience is sort of what you're going for.
Right.
But the Green Lady is cool in that it is much more of a jazz lounge. They only serve drinks. So you're just kind of, you go in, the jazz is already going. You're not there you don't have to show up at the beginning of the set or anything. There's no fanfare to it. You just show up whenever you want. You leave whenever you want. And you roam around. There's 2 floors. And you can listen to jazz on both floors, get drinks on both floors.
There's often a band performing on each level, so you can kind of drift back and forth as your interest drifts. Although it was easier for me to do that when I was there on my own than when we had to try and get seating together, right? You'd go on an excursion where okay, I'm going to go see if I can find us 2 seats upstairs, because the upstairs seems to be the slightly hotter proposition. And it'd be like, well, okay, so say I found 2 chairs. How am I going to tell you? There's no way to share that information and get you to where I am, especially because this club is so dark. It is like, it's like if you picture the Red Room in Twin Peaks in terms of the general color palette. Now turn the lights all the way down.
Yeah, the seating was difficult. There are sort of different types of people at the jazz club. There are people who are clearly there on a date. That's pretty common. Like young people being like, what is a cool date to do in this city? And they've looked it up on Reddit, and this place has come up. And so they're on this kind of classy date, but they don't know each other that well.
Imagine when we started dating and I was 20, I think, and you were 21. Something like that. If I had the wherewithal to take you to a place like that, which is totally affordable. It's $10 to get in. The drinks are acceptable. I feel like you would have been blown away.
I would have absolutely been blown away. However, no, it was not affordable for us at that time. We were very hard pressed when we were that age, and even a little after, to we never spent money on alcohol out almost ever, because that was just such a huge chunk of our budget. I guess I'm agreeing with you that it would have really blown my mind as a date. I don't think that we could have quite afforded it or would have thought to afford it. I think we would have been too intimidated. And I also think that some of the people who went just had no idea how to date in this space, which, to be fair, is quite hard. When we tried to have conversations, it was often pretty difficult to hear each other, right? So this is not a place where you go to get to know each other, but people were using it that way, I think.
If you shout loud enough, you can get to know anyone anywhere. I think that was the philosophy.
And some people definitely, shared that strategy. My feeling was that it did make a better date for us now as an advanced level, mature couple. Because we can just sit in silence and listen to some jazz and gaze at each other lovingly and say nothing and have a very good time. So that was, that's the kind of date I enjoy.
It did feel like we were at times exploring the outer boundaries of our own comfort with not having a conversation on a date. There were definitely moments where I just had to tell myself, they're not saying anything either.
Yeah.
You're not the only one that has apparently run out of interesting ideas to say.
Well, it's exhausting for me anyway, to keep trying to have a meaningful conversation when it's so loud and you can hear everyone's conversations. At that point, I would just rather hold hands and listen to the music. And one thing I read about the Green Lady also is that I think it has gotten busier in general, like maybe even since you've gone there. I don't know if it was clearly a big deal to the city that a season of Queer Eye, a recent season, was filmed in Kansas City. And so there were these signs up in restaurants and other places being like, yep, this is where the Queer Eye boys were. This is where they got tacos. This is where they, got their haircuts or whatever. So I wondered about that, I was like, maybe they went to a jazz club. You could see that. The culture guy would definitely have you, take your date to a jazz club.
I mean, my memory is that the culture guy would help you shape your beard about as much as he would, he didn't seem, people made fun of the cooking guy for not knowing how to cook. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But the culture guy, I'm not sure he knew what culture was.
I think I haven't watched later seasons, so I have to hope that they kind of helped figure that out. Because it often seemed like his contribution was sort of like building the person's confidence, generally speaking. And
yes, he was inspirational pretty often.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is cultural, to be inspired.
Right. And I do think he maybe gave date ideas once or twice. I think that was kind of the idea in part, was to let's get you into the community. Let's get you actively participating in the culture here rather than just being at home or whatever.
I would rather that he were reading Nietzsche quotes to them.
Yeah.
And attempting to motivate and inspire them with, really bracing encounters with complicated ideas.
I also like the idea that he would sort of, in a perfect world, maybe create bespoke life plans for them a little bit. Like maybe he interviews you about your likes and, eventually he sort of uncovers oh, wow. Yeah, you have a really interesting relationship to monster truck rallies. You used to do those with your dad, and now you feel like you're not welcome there anymore because you're gay or something. And
if they had to occasionally weave that into the advice, because you're gay or something, I think that could help.
Yeah. And then he finds you places you can go that are friendly, that, you get to enjoy your likes and meet your people, maybe meet a partner at the monster truck rally that's LGBTQ friendly.
It's on the Google Maps listing, how every business is woman-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ friendly, whatever they can. The Google Maps business descriptions are the main place where Woke One still holds purchase for some reason. And the Monster Truck Rally could totally have all of those badges.
I mean, I would say, though, if it did, I'd be more likely to go. That's the one scenario, I think, where if they had that badge on Google, I'd be like, they probably mean that. I feel safe here.
I feel like unless one of the monster trucks is gay, I'm not interested.
Okay.
I need representation in my monster truck rally. Yeah. Truckosaurus has to be a top or a bottom. Truckosaurus can be a bottom. But I want to know. I want to know one way or the other.
What if Truckosaurus was in drag? Does that make you feel represented, or does that make you feel pandered to?
I'm anxious now about bachelorette parties if Truckosaurus is in drag. Yeah. I feel like one of those could roll in and really take over the monster truck rally, and I would resent it.
Which, that was also a thing we saw a lot in the jazz club, was bachelorette parties. Which, again, I thought that too. I was like, man, I wish I had gone to a jazz club for my bachelorette party. I think that would have been really fun. My friends threw me a very nice bachelorette party, and we went to Mass Ave in Indianapolis, and so we did take in some arts and culture. We went to a gallery walk. But like if there had been jazz, that would have been pretty cool.
I don't remember most of my bachelorette party very clearly anymore. Like, I honestly, did you remember what the first activity was? All I remember is that it ended in a Village Inn.
A Denny's, I believe.
A Denny's. Okay, Denny's.
Yeah, I
yes,
believe
you're right.
you were a bachelorette first at the local watering hole. I forget the name of it, but there was a bar that you liked as a bachelorette. And then I don't remember if you went to play pool. You might have.
We could have.
But I know that you ended up at Denny's because that was during the brief window where Denny's had a partnership with various like alt punk bands. And so they were offering the Huba Stankerito. And I believe you brought the placemat home.
Yes.
I don't think we still have it anywhere, unfortunately, but there was
that is too bad.
Taking Back Sunday Patachos or something.
Yes. Yes. I remember the Taking Back Sunday menu contributions vaguely as well. And I remember hearing a really gross story from my best man. That was like how he felt we should sort of cap the situation off.
Yeah.
It was like, let's talk about sex real quick, but like not in a way that's at all sexy.
Oh no.
And that's and then I came home to you.
Yeah, I mean, and I took you out to, well, it was like 4 a.m. I ran you by Whataburger, got you a honey
yes.
chicken biscuit on the way home. And previously, I had gone to the Taco Bell and gotten a bunch of hot sauces that said, "Will you marry me?" which is one of their like main slogans that they have. Like I kind of picked through them to find "Will you marry me" ones. And then I had hung up like a little paper chain of I think of Reasons I Loved You or something around the apartment, and then I proposed to you to cap off your evening of debauchery. So hopefully I redeemed it a little bit.
I remember the little paper chain and you proposing. I do not remember the "Will you marry me" Taco Bell sauce packets, and that feels like another terrible loss.
No, it may have been that I did get them, but I like couldn't think of a way to work them in. Because I did have I had this idea basically while you were away. I did not plan it for very long. I was just like, when he comes back, I wanna propose to him officially. I think that would be fun. 'Cause he didn't get that. And so I remember looking up ways to do it, and that was a suggestion online, was the Taco Bell thing. But then, yeah, you think about it and how you would make it work, and it's just pretty hard. I don't know the best way to work that in. I think you just kind of slip it to your partner, like as you're getting Taco Bell. Yeah, I'm just passing you some sauce, and what does it say there? Oh, look, I'm down on one knee.
I'm enjoying the idea of doing a Taco Bell trip. You have only the "Will you marry me" sauces. You keep handing them to me as I ask you, "Another sauce, please, sir. May I have another sauce?" And you're waiting for me to notice, and you're just
throwing them aside. Yeah,
squirting them out on my little soft tacos, and I'm just eating them, and I'm missing your great proposal, and you're so mad. You're like, I thought so hard about the best way to do this.
Yeah.
And we love Taco Bell and we love each other, so this seemed like the way to go.
Yeah. So I do believe I went to the trouble of getting the sauce packets, but once I had them, it was like, what is this even? What are we gonna? How are we gonna stage this? This doesn't feel like it'll work.
You got to spell "Will you marry me" with the sauce packets.
Whoa. Whoa.
And then maybe like once I understand what is being proposed, we fall upon them as lovers and make out for a while and roll around on the sauce packets, and you've actually punctured little holes on them. Yeah, in them. Yeah, so they goosh around, and then you keep the bedspread as a memento.
Oh God. Yeah, no, maybe that's an approach. You know what else I just realized, and I don't know if I realized this at the time. It would be very funny to me if I did. Your preferred sauce at the Taco Bell is the hottest one available, the Diablo.
Yes.
The "Will you marry me" slogans are only available on the fire sauce.
Imagine my resentment.
Yeah. So what if I was
packets.
just I'm just handing you packets of the sauce that you don't prefer.
Like, excuse me, honey, would you like to try again?
Yeah, and I'm just like, I really think you should try this one today. Maybe take a closer look at it.
I don't know how looking at it closer is going to make it any hotter.
So now the listener knows how romantic we are.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we were very romantic in the jazz club.
Yeah, we used a lot of Taco Bell hot sauce packets to improve our date.
Yeah, we just sort of rearranged them into messages and symbols. Did a lot of hearts.
Yeah. I appreciate that you're willing to carry that many in your purse around town so we can communicate with each other.
Think how many I had to get from Taco Bell in order to have that many that said, "Will you marry me?"
Were you okay? So I thought we were going to move on from this, but now I need to.
No, I think we should, but go ahead.
When you were getting the hot sauce packets, does that mean that you went into the Taco Bell and you were sorting through, in the little sauce station by the garbage can, picking out the "Will you marry me's"?
No, my memory is I went through the drive-thru, got an order, and just asked for an absurd number of sauce packets.
And they said, "Oh, trying to get engaged."
Yeah.
Trying to ask somebody to marry you.
Yeah.
We've been getting a lot of this.
Yeah, they saw it coming.
So after we went to the jazz, and then before we went to more jazz, and in between trips to various eateries and barbecueries and international tap houses, we went to a used bookstore, which I don't know how I'm going to edit this episode for a number of reasons. And one thing is it feels like this should go up front because this is sort of the nominal excuse for what we're doing on this, my favorite literary podcast that I host.
Mm-hmm, right.
But yeah, it was a fun used bookstore that we went to. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the used bookstore experience, how it's different choosing books there from other places. So to summarize what I did there. Well, do you remember the name of the bookstore?
Prospero's.
Yes. So Prospero's, I bought Jonathan Lethem's The Arrest, and I bought Orhan Pamuk's The New Life. So 2 novels. Big surprise there. Buying the Jonathan Lethem was a moment of personal growth for me because I am a Lethem fan of some time, and I really enjoy his work. But as I have reached a point in my life where it becomes clear that I'm probably not going to have the Jonathan Lethem career, I have had some resentment bubbling. How come this guy gets to write all the a million books and they're well received and people like them and think he's good? How come that's not happening for me? And the book that I got, The Arrest, is a little bit symbolic for me in that regard because that is the book that he published with Echo the same year that I found I was going to be published, my last book with Echo. And he's still working with them and is still successful. And I am somewhat less successful. And so I had some resentment with regard to that book. But it also looked like a good book and it looked interesting. And so now I own a copy.
I feel like I didn't totally clock your relationship with Lethem. I thought that you just sort of fell off the the wagon with him a little bit.
He writes a lot, and you do need breaks with him, I find. Like, you don't necessarily want to read everything that he's written, because that would be a fair amount of your annual reading volume. And then also, you know, it's nice to have a break and come back, right? So that's the other side of it. Is I had been taking my break. I had felt like I'd read a couple of his, and I needed some time away so I could fall in love again.
Nice. And you got another one too, right?
Yeah, the Orhan Pamuk, the New Life. So that's a novel. You know, there's its own. There's another resentful story there. This is writing. You mostly end up resenting people, just because. So he is one of the alumni that when I worked at the International Writing Program, we talked about constantly, because he. Oh gosh, has he won the Nobel? Is that? I'm going to Google this. Yes, he is the recipient of the 2006 Nobel Prize in Literature. And so we were constantly bragging about him. And I left that job with a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And so, but I really wanted to continue the education in international literature in translation that I had sort of begun for myself there. And so I am trying to get back out onto that horse as well, even as I am like still kind of mad about the whole experience.
Yeah. Well, I am sorry that your book purchases came out of such resentment, but
well, I was triumphing over the resentment.
I know. Yeah, I'm happy that the used bookstore could get you there, and I wondered if that was part of it at all. Like, was it because you knew that the authors would not be seeing any proceeds from the purchase of these books?
Right. Well, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. This is one of the like fundamental used bookstore dynamics for me, because, you know, people talk about their pile of shame with books. They talk about, I buy all these books and I don't read them. And my feeling generally is like, one, don't spend money you don't have. Like, don't buy books if you can't afford them and you're not reading them. That's silly. But if you can afford them, I don't think a book purchase is basically ever a waste, because if nothing else, you've given some money to the writer, and that's kind of hard to come by. So I always feel like just because I don't end up making time in my life to read a book doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the transaction of purchasing the book, showing my enthusiasm for the writer, my well wishes, and then, you know, often 2 or 3 or 5 years later, I do pick up the book, right? It happens according to its own logic. So normally when I make kind of flippant purchases, kind of thoughtlessly, that's what I'm telling myself. Like, don't worry about it too much. It didn't cost that much, and you're helping this other person anyway. But used bookstores kind of fuck that dynamic up, because the author will not be receiving any funds, whether they are alive or dead. But because the books are cheaper, there is a feeling, and I think this is also just like sort of the used bookstore vibe. This is part of the experience. You want to buy more carelessly than ever, right? You want to just pick up a couple things. Like the perfect used book experience for me is that I pick up a thing I've never heard of, that I never knew existed, and I briefly convince myself that I'm going to love it. And then often I don't end up reading it. But I really enjoy the moments where I think this is going to be the moment where I fall in love with this new author. And the used bookstore does provide, because like, part of what makes that possible is the cheapness. Part of what makes it possible is that going to the used bookstore feels like a little bit of an event in a way that even going to a normal bookstore maybe doesn't now, because we're so used to buying books online. Like it's taken away a little bit of the specialness. But there's also like this really weird kind of discovery that's possible there, because what they have in their collection is so completely unpredictable beyond a couple of like, you're going to have some Stephen Kings. But like the things that end up being important in a given used bookstore, the writer that they just happen to have like the entire, body of work from, and then the other writers that they don't have anything from, it's totally different from what you would get in a normal bookstore, right? It's sort of a funhouse mirror. So like, it is really fun to encounter those things that you probably wouldn't in another place, and that you wouldn't give a chance because they look chintzy or whatever. Like, well, okay, it looks chintzy. It's in a used bookstore. What did you expect?
Right.
So I really like that about it. but it short circuits my critical apparatus for choosing books a little bit, which I do think is part of why I was kind of cowardly in some ways with this, right? Because like you said, I historically like Lethem. I read a lot of his books, and I bought the Nobel Prize winner's book because well, even if it doesn't totally work out, at least this is kind of a fancy thing to have on my shelf, right?
I don't know. I guess I wouldn't call that chickening out exactly, because you didn't invest in a brand new shiny copy of the book, you sort of are less committed to it. I mean, maybe there's an extent to which that's true, but I don't know.
I meant more, I was chickening out because I did not, we went down into the basement where they kept the science fiction and some of the other stuff. And I saw a number of things there that looked both fascinating and kind of awful. And I think I chickened out a little bit in that I did not give one of those things a chance.
I see.
There were some really weird looking books that clearly the author had disappeared from the cultural memory. I'd never heard of the person. I certainly had never heard of the book. And I like to indulge in one of those when I go to a used bookstore, but I just did not, I didn't feel it. I didn't have the energy, didn't have the power.
I think honestly, for me, that effect was 100% contingent on the state of the lower level, because the lower level was, I mean, first of all, this place was a house. It was, formerly a house. That was very evident from the structure.
You could go upstairs and get your fortune read.
Which we didn't do. I did later learn, I think there were more books up there. Maybe we should have gone up there, but I was too scared of the fortune teller.
I could not risk encountering the fortune teller and having to say, no, I would not like to have my fortune read today. Thank you.
I'm sure they were ready to hear that, but I just didn't want to have the conversation. But the lower level was clearly the basement, and it was a very low ceilinged basement. It was never meant to be, it was a functional basement, right? It was never like a finished basement, or a lower level that would have been very, I don't know, fun to live in.
You wouldn't have had a beloved relative live there. Maybe an uncle who had fallen on hard times could live in that basement, but not a beloved grampy or Grammy.
Even then, even an uncle, it was, it was such a boiler room of a basement, and you could hear every footfall from upstairs just right above your head.
Yes.
It was clearly like a cellar.
Yeah.
And just lined with bookshelves, and the floors were uneven and went into weird corners.
Yeah.
Everything just felt very ramshackle, like it was going to fall down on top of you at any moment. And it also was the case that if one person was looking at a little alcove of books, then there could not be two people in there.
No. You could only share one of those alcoves with a trusted lover. A lover with which one would be comfortable indulging in any number of Taco Bell hot sauce based acts.
Yeah, if nothing else, there would be full contact the entire time if you were squashing two people in there. So I was interested in looking at some of those books a little more carefully, but I just didn't feel invited to browse there at all. It just made me feel like I needed to get out of there pretty quickly in case of an earthquake. But I did spend some more time on the main level. And used bookstores are my very, very favorite place to just browse. And I very rarely get fiction in a used bookstore. I do always start in the fiction section 100% of the time. I do a check for William Goldman, who is just, always been a favorite author of mine, and I'd like to have a full collection at some point. I could do this pretty easily. He's mostly out of print at this point. Most of his stuff is out of print, but with the exception of The Princess Bride, which you can always find. But, I could get it on eBay or something. I could get nice copies from Abe's Books or whatever. But I like just kind of going to the shop and looking and seeing if I find something new. That's just always fun to me. I like knowing that somebody else has read it. and it's been in somebody's house, I guess. I don't know. That's the relationship I want with that author.
I never think about the fact that somebody else has read it and it's been in someone else's house. That does not enhance it for me. I understand the theory of that. I get the idea, but to me, it is preferable that I pretend that I do not know that about 30% of reading happens on the toilet.
And I'll get to that in just a second, actually.
Excellent.
So that's about the extent of my relationship with the fiction section. I mostly spend my time in nonfiction, which is a place I would not go to generally in a regular bookstore. In a new bookstore, I'm rarely looking for new nonfiction. I'm interested specifically in old nonfiction. Even though I know that may compromise some accuracy, I just really think whatever ends up in a used bookstore's Asia section, there's always something there that I'm like, well, I have never seen this before and I will never encounter it again, so I'm going to buy it. And so I spend a lot of time there. I spend a lot of time often in the books on writing and publishing area, because again, I'm basically never going to buy a craft book or something like that new. I don't know why. I can't quite tell you why, but some of my fondest experiences have been finding a book of writing advice or writing prompts or, something about publishing from a used bookstore. So I always look there. And this time I got a book on typography, like the history of typography, and it's called The Pocket Pal.
So that's what The Pocket Pal is, because I've been seeing the book around, and I think you mentioned to me at some point what it was, but I forgot. So it was just, I was enjoying imagining what would be in a Pocket Pal.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's a pocket-sized history of printing presses and typography. It's got all the definitions you could want in it of leading and folios and whatnot, signatures. And that's one where I am interested in the subject matter. I am sure that by now this is not the premier source of information on typography. I'm sure there is a better, more updated edition. But by the same token, this was, as indicated by its form factor of the Pocket Pal, this is from a time when you, as a professional, you would be so in tune with these concepts. These would be such a part of your day-to-day life that you would need a Pocket Pal to give a quick reference. And I think that's really cool. I think that's much cooler than buying a big design Bible or whatever. I just really like that this was on somebody's desk or whatever. That's neat to me.
This is a little bit of an aside, but when we went to the art museum there, which Kansas City has a really nice art museum, strong collection, lots of fun stuff to see. I was very proud of myself for putting the map in my butt pocket in my pants, because for me, historically, risking messing up the collective, the family's map of the museum when we're trying to navigate, that would have felt really risky, thoughtless, careless. And this time I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And I even sat on the map several times, and it was still fine. It still worked fine.
The map came out fine, and I had no qualms at all about handing it over to you.
Even though you knew it was going to be on my butt.
Yeah, I'm just saying, never occurred to me that you wouldn't take good care of the map. I implicitly trust you with a art museum map.
That's interesting. I don't know what I've done to justify that confidence, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know. Think on it.
The other thing about this used bookstore, that it was one of those things where I saw this and I was like, well, I guess most of the time when I go to a used bookstore in general, it's half price books, and that's presumably why this doesn't happen. But it was It felt to me like the whole thing was sort of designed to let you know that at some point the owner had been kind of a cool punk rock guy, because there were photos from various parties of people who might have been doing the really cool party stuff. They might have been on some of the jazz drugs, and they were playing instruments, and they just had crazy hair sometimes, and looking at the camera like, what's going on? I don't know who's coming or going. Sometimes in the bookshop. So you were like, oh, this is a bookstore where cool things happen sometimes. And they also had allowed, I think encouraged probably people to do graffiti on the bookshelves in the basement, which did add to, like, it's not that I find graffiti menacing, but I do find it visually disorganized, right? Like there's just a little bit of chaos inherent in having a bunch of different people writing in different kinds of ink with their own handwriting on these shelves. So it did make it a little more visually overwhelming and a little bit less welcoming. But if I were a teenager, you know how cool I would have thought that was? When I was a teenager, I was so into the idea of people like marking up spaces that they shared and stuff. I thought it was the coolest thing. And I was like, they should be doing... I feel like you got to do this everywhere. But I mean, that's a slippery slope, I guess. But, you know, the teens don't know what's going on in the basement because they're not going down there.
I did have that thought, too, that, I felt myself resisting it a little bit. But I also felt the pull of it, where I was like, I love that people come in here and everybody feels invited to write on the shelf. I had a thought at one point, like, do I have anything I want to write on the shelf?
Am I supposed to write on the shelf? Is that... Because it wasn't totally clear to me. It wasn't like I saw anybody doing it. I didn't quite feel invited to do it myself, but I think that was because I wasn't a local. I was like, I'm a tourist. I'm not going to be able to come back and visit my graffiti later.
I felt invited to do it just by the sheer volume of it that had, never been touched or erased. It felt a little bit like an expectation. But there were also like DIY poetry reading signs on the walls, like poetry readings long past, that likewise felt like, I guess this was probably kind of a countercultural atmosphere at some point. And just the way the guy checked out the books, or sold us the books as well. It just felt like he was kind of a brusque guy.
It was a little cool the way he sold us the books.
Yes, it was a little cool. It was as if he wanted to say, this is not all I do or have done. And I'm like, that's okay, sir. I know. This
is not the whole of who I am.
Right. But to your point also, though, about like thinking about like the mystique of books that have been owned before. There is some magic to me in that. I do like thinking about, my favorite thing is when I get a book and there's an inscription in it. Because there's always that sort of feeling of like, okay, so what happened? Did the person who received this book with this heartfelt inscription, did they die? That's one very plausible answer. Another very plausible answer, they never wanted this book. They never read this book.
They don't even know about the inscription.
Yeah, exactly. So I love getting heartfelt inscriptions to Linda from Steve or whatever, especially when it's from the author. And just thinking like, oh, sorry, Linda didn't love this book.
Yeah. That is an aspect of the used bookstore experience that I did want to make sure I talked about briefly. The experience of being a writer and going to a used bookstore. Because, of course, the first thing I do whenever I go to a bookstore is I go and I check if they have a copy of my book. And the answer, because of the realities of, how booksellers need to value their shelf space, the answer will generally be yes for a couple years. And then increasingly it is no, right? They had to give that up. They had to move on to other things.
And that's a new bookseller.
Yes.
Because I feel like a used bookseller, I always look for yours too. It's one of my stops in fiction, but it seems rare there.
Yeah, well, because it has to get through so many more filters to get to the point where it would be a used book, right? But I have seen it. And I have seen friends will occasionally encounter one in a half price books store and send me a photo. And there's always sort of an apologetic note attached. Like, I don't know if this is good or not, but I saw this. And the reason they're saying that, there's a couple of reasons. One is, one reason that genuinely is annoying is you often will find,
ARCs.
yeah, you find advanced reader copies, and that is annoying.
Galleys, yeah.
They're not the finished book, and in my experience, they generally have substantial errors. And a person who was not supposed to has sold an inferior version of your book after they maybe reviewed it or considered it for review, maybe not. I don't like seeing those. But anything else, I'm really happy to see, because it does suggest that maybe somebody got the book and they didn't like it. I think I have actually had one show up. Maybe this was an online seller where there was a signature from me. And that's not ideal, I suppose. In a perfect world, I would be massively successful and units would be moving daily, and no one would, the demand would be so high it would never get to the used bookstore. You would never see it on the shelf if you went, because it would already have flown off. But that's not how it works. I already know that's not what's happening. I already know that I'm not that big of a deal. And for me, there's a number of special little moments that you get when you publish, and that's one of them. Showing up in a used bookstore feels different from showing up in a library, feels different from showing up in a new bookstore. Each one of those is a place that I loved as a kid, right? That the Half Price Books was one of my favorite places to go as a teenager. And the idea that I would have a book for sale there, even though I'm not going to see any of the money from that sale, to me, that is a really surprising and powerful thing to see that I just didn't expect growing up. So to me, it's always good news. I'm always happy to see it, even if on some level it might imply that I am not quite the hottest property on earth.
Yeah, and I mean, something you alluded to there that I think is important is the used bookstore has both, these sort of rare treasure finds where it's oh man, that's, this is rare, and it's ended up it's gone through several hands and then it ended up here. But it's also where college textbooks go to die. And so you're so much more likely to see something that has thoroughly saturated the market and just has so many extra copies floating around that it's not even popular, right? It's just it's just ubiquitous. So you'll get there, you'll find 40 copies of Frankenstein. That's not how popular Frankenstein is, really. That's not, that's not really a measure, I don't think, of the popularity of Mary Shelley or her success as an author. It's just, that's a book everybody has to read for some reason. And likewise, you end up, a lot of that lower level basement section was, endless books by Debbie McComber and James McPherson? I forget, one of the sort of airport paperback style novels where it's there were so many extra copies of this floating around out here that it's not even necessarily that people liked it that much. It's just a million were produced. So, of course, this place became a landfill for some of them.
It is special to be a landfill. It is.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind being part of a landfill. So many Mike Meginnis books have been made that you gotta send them somewhere.
I mean, it is still a sign of success. I understand what you're saying, but it would mean that I'd had a really spectacular career by some measures. I think it's funny. I always get a little stressed out when I go to a place like a used bookstore or pawn shop or whatever, because the line between a person who is doing this because they had a viable idea for a business and they chose a good location and they've been, scraping it together over the years, and the person who doesn't particularly need to make money and has a lot of shit and they want more shit and they will just keep acquiring it forever. It can be really hard to tell which kind of story you're in, and they're both fine, but if you start to feel the second vibe too much, I it induces a lot of anxiety for me.
Yes, I think organization becomes very important in those stores. I've definitely been in some used bookstores where the system of cataloging was completely unclear, and it was pretty much just like, yeah, we've got a fiction section and a nonfiction section. The nonfiction is most of the store. I don't know, just browse. I think I arranged them by color or something.
Good luck.
You know?
Well, and the other thing is, I almost never in a used bookstore know how much anything is going to cost for related reasons. Because some of them will have, like Half Price Books has a pretty good system for letting you know that. It has stickers. It has like categories where it's like any paperback romance is 25 cents. But in most used bookstores, it's like maybe they wrote it on the inside cover somewhere or something. And like, I never honestly look because it's like, it's it's never surprised me in a negative way. It's never been like, what, $300?
Right. Well, they usually have the good sense, like Half Price Books, to set aside any like really rare finds in a special cabinet. Which I have started looking at those more often now. In fact, the other book I got is one by Baroness, I'm not sure I'll say the name right, Orczy, who wrote The Scarlet Pimpernel, which is my niece's favorite book. So I got her another book by the same author, like a mystery sort of story. And she's interested in early editions. Like she's doing some research on it because she's a nerd like me and I'm proud of her. So I've been looking for rare editions, and usually I would just sort of overlook that section because I feel like you find just often real garbage there.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, oh, Lord Jim is here. There's 8 copies of Lord Jim. But yeah, I've started looking at those, but it does mean sometimes you're surprised with like, oh, this is $300. I see.
Yes, that is a different number. I like used bookstores for gifts. I don't know how often it works out. I feel like I've probably bought used books thinking that I was getting somebody a gift, and then I discovered later on getting home, like, no, this is just going to stay in my house. This is just going to languish here. This isn't actually a great idea like I convinced myself it was while I was there. But it's a fun theory.
Yeah, and it does, I don't know, the quality or condition of the book is important to its giftitude. Like, I do feel kind of bad gifting her this. It probably will not be like a formal, Christmas gift. It'll just be sort of a, here's the thing I wanted to see if you like it. If you don't, I'll take it back, to my house where it will rot. But I wish I knew how to sort of de-stink some of the used books.
You're supposed to love that. Everybody says that we love the book stink.
And there is a version of the book stink I love. Like, it's nice when you go into the store and you're immediately hit with the book stink as a sort of cloud. But I just feel like all of these books feel like spider webs to me. They feel covered in spider webs and probably spiders. And I want to be able to spray some kind of enzymatic solution on them to get rid of the accumulated dust and bug guts that I feel must be on all of them. I haven't discovered a way to do that yet.
I find really upsetting. I don't like when you open a book and you like turn the page and you get a fresh or different book stink.
Yeah.
Like when interacting with the book produces new smells, I'd say that's pretty far from the experience that I want. And I don't totally believe people who claim that they love it.
Yeah. It's a texture thing for me as much as smell. I just feel like sometimes you get these books that are old enough that their paper is just, gummy to the touch.
I'm not sure I've experienced the gumminess, but I'm sorry that you have.
Yeah. Again, it all feels like it's been coated in spider webs to me, and I wish I could hose it down. The best advice I've found is to leave it open in the sun a few pages at a time, and the sun will kill the bacteria.
Sure.
And sort of refresh it, but then you have to leave the book in the sun, which also fades it. So
that's a lot of work to get rid of some texture.
Yeah. I wish I could just dunk them in a vat to renew them, honestly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time we dunk this podcast in a vat.
Uh-huh.
How are the cats doing? Can we see, what's the cat status?
Current cat status, I've got 2 that I'm looking at.
Which ones we
right
got?
now. I bet you know which ones.
Is it Molly and Tony?
That's right.
Well, as we always say here at Library Pizza, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.